never forgive me for moving far away. I can date you, but you cannot tell my best friend. She gets really jealous when I have a boyfriend and she doesn't. In each scenario that I just presented to you, the person is either taking responsibility for actions and emotions that are not theirs, or they're demanding that someone else takes responsibility for their actions and emotions. Again, you're picking up situations that just do not belong to you. What are some reasons you feel it necessary that we take the time to define and set personal boundaries with our friends, our family, or even in romantic relationships? It's important that you set ground rules on what is and what is not acceptable to you. Because oftentimes when you don't, you find yourself in situations where people are taking advantage of you, or you're giving way too much, and then you end up overwhelmed and frustrated. Have you ever experienced any of these statements? I'm just trying to make sure that you can find yourself somewhere in here. People take advantage of my kindness. I don't feel appreciated. I feel burnt out on giving and not receiving. I find myself not taking the time to take care of myself because I am too busy taking care of everyone else's needs. Do you find yourself saying yes when you really want to say no? You apologize for things you don't do or didn't cause. You feel guilty for no reason at all. You spend time with people you don't like. You do your best to avoid any type of conflict. You compromise your personal values if it means people will be happy with you. Others go through your personal belongings without your permission. You put up with people criticizing you, making comments about your weight. They take their anger out on you, humiliate you in front of others, tell off-color jokes, invade your personal space, or say things like, you were just in the way, and then back that up with, oh, I was just joking. Do you find yourself in positions where you feel like you need to replenish your emotional energy because you are so drained having to deal with all the needs of everyone else around you? Then it's time for you to realize that you have set some poor personal boundaries and take steps to change those things. So you want to know how you can personally put in some personal boundaries. There are a few steps that you can take. You can calmly and assertively state your boundary at a time where you have emotional clarity, where you're not upset, you're not frustrated, you're not agitated. So in the heat of a moment where somebody has just completely pissed you off, I wouldn't advise trying to set a boundary there because things get escalated and you might end up saying something that you might not necessarily mean. And on top of it, now you have to go back and apologize for the way that you said something. You can set a boundary. That is your right. Retreat from the reaction. So I call this giving yourself a personal timeout. You know how kids act up and you put little John John in the corner and tell him to face the wall, and you give him a certain time that he has to stand there? You give yourself a certain time to remove yourself from whatever it is that's upset you or has triggered you, and you feel like you are about to explode. In doing that, some things that you might be able to do when you have removed yourself from that situation is think about what it is that you want to say. Really ask yourself why it bothered you so much. Practice saying what it is that you need to say. Once you've set that boundary with that person, it really isn't your responsibility how they're going to react. That really isn't your bag to pick up. Don't pick it up. Take some time and really breathe through those feelings of being upset, discomforted, until you feel like you are on an even keel and can address the situation again calmly. If you get pushback from the other person, once you've set that boundary of, I feel disrespected, this is not cool with me, moving forward, this is how this is going to be handled. If there's an issue with that, then I understand that you're upset about it, but this is not going to happen. I don't have to put up with this, and I'm not going to. Remember, other people's emotions are not your responsibility. Think of it this way. A lot of us have kids. If we tell our child not to go put their hand on the stove, and then they end up putting their hand on the stove, now it may not be on, but you gave him a clear boundary, and you told him or her not to touch the stove, and they did it anyway, or they do that thing that they like to do where they go back and forth doing what it is, touching whatever it is you told them not to touch, they just earned themselves a consequence. They've lost a privilege. They've lost access to something that might be fun, but they experienced the negative outcome of a choice that they made. It's the same thing with setting a personal boundary. And understand this. You being silent with someone speaks louder sometimes than words that you can use. I'm not saying that you need to be quiet all the time, because we do need to use our voices, but removing yourself from situations, not speaking on certain topics until you feel like you are in a space where you can address it and be understood clearly, your silence speaks volumes. So now that you've found yourself in all of these statements, you've been upset about something. Are you in a space at this time, now that you've calmed down, to consider being assertive? Or are you afraid to use your voice? God gave us 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 ears, and 1 mouth for a reason. It's always best if we listen twice as much as we speak. so that when we speak, we make sure that what it is we say is worth being heard. And not using your voice, that is one of the biggest mistakes you could ever make. What are you afraid of by not speaking? What are you afraid of by not standing in your truth? Is it a loss of connection, being alone, not being understood? Just let that sit with you for a while. I want to kind of move into what being assertive looks like. Assertive communication is not you yelling, screaming, and cursing somebody out because they have upset you, violated a personal boundary. Being assertive in your communication is when you clearly, directly, respectfully communicate your thoughts, your feelings, and your needs. And being assertive in how you communicate with others, a few things you might want to do is you want to check in with yourself regularly to find out what you're feeling and what you need. If you don't know what you need, you haven't taken the time to ask yourself simple questions. Why does this bother me? What do I need? How do I need to tell this person this? If you haven't asked yourself those questions, how can you tell somebody else what you need? It's like you get a phone call and they tell you there's been a car accident. The phone call drops. There's no other information. So the person that has been communicated to has gone from A to Z of the worst possible scenario because no other information was given to them. It's the same thing in being assertive. If you don't use your voice and you don't clearly define what it is that is okay with you, what bothers you, what is definitely, oh no, that cannot happen type situation, you're leaving yourself in a situation where people are reading your mind and you're sitting there miserable because you haven't told them that that's not something that you like. So like coming to my house and I feed you Brussels sprouts and you hate Brussels sprouts or you're allergic to them, but you eat them because I've given them to you. And every time you come to my house or every time you leave my house, you have some type of allergic reaction, but you keep coming back to my house and I keep feeding you those Brussels sprouts because I think that's what you enjoy eating. If you aren't assertive in your communication and you don't clearly and directly tell me what it is you're thinking, you're feeling, or you're needing, then you leave it up to the other person to try to figure out what it is. It's not fair to them and it's not fair to you. So put your needs as well as the other person's needs in perspective and use your voice. And you being assertive, you want to pick a good time to express your thoughts and your feelings. Be sure that the other person is giving you their full attention. So the absolute wrong time to try to talk to your man, for an example, you are not going to have a conversation with him when he is sitting there watching Super Bowl. because the conversation is going to go somewhat like this. Baby,